So, you want to own a Marantz 2270. This was the very first vintage receiver I ever bought. Sometimes I love it, sometimes I kind of hate it. Let's talk about the pros and cons of owning a Marantz 2270 right after this. Okay, so as I mentioned in the intro, this was the very first vintage receiver I ever bought. It's a Marantz 2270. I found it on Craigslist. There was a gentleman selling off his dad's hi-fi gear, and I actually bought this 2270, a Sansui 2000X, and a Pioneer SX450 all together for $600. This was probably 6 or 7 years ago. When I saw the ad pop up on Craigslist, I jumped at it. I had been shopping for 2270s for quite some time and just couldn't pass it up. But the prices on these units have gone kind of through the roof, and whenever I tell someone I own a 2270, like, it's crazy. It's almost like they start salivating and be like, "Oh, tell me all about it," you know? And it's a great receiver, but it has, this unit specifically and others that I've seen have problems. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about the pros and cons of having a Marantz 2270. And a lot of the things I mentioned will also apply to the other, lower powered units or even higher power units in the 22 line. So the 2215, 2230, etc. But first, let's talk about the pros of this unit. And let's focus mostly on just strict performance. So as I'm sure you're aware of, the last two digits in the numbers of the unit model numbers are basically referencing the wattage. So 2270 is actually 70 watts per channel at 8 ohms. And that's a lot of power, especially for the era of these units when they were released in the 70s. And I think that's what kind of gets most people excited, is having the 70 watts per channel. Now, a couple other things that I like about this unit. It actually has two phono inputs. So it's got phono 1, phono 2. So if I wanted to, I could hook up two turntables, and be able to swap back and forth between them. Now, this would not act as like a DJ mixer. I can't be playing both of them at the same time. But if I had a turntable with maybe a stylus that was a little bit more geared towards like jazz listening, then I had another turntable with a stylus that was maybe more for rock, I could hook both of these up and not have to swap that stylus in and out. And I know some people will probably think that's absolutely insane that someone would do that, but we do, don't we? We swap those styluses out. Anyway, enjoy those two phono inputs on there. Now, you'll notice that on the rear of this unit, there are jumpers that will allow you to separate the unit and use it as a standalone preamp or amplifier only. I've actually made a video about this, and I'll put a link to the description below. But you can remove those jumpers and then use this unit only as a preamp, and then connect it to a standalone amplifier. Or you can vice versa, you can switch that and you can use this only as an amplifier and hook up a different preamp to it as well. And you're able to do that via the jumpers in the back. I always think that's kind of nice on these higher powered units, especially for the money they're going for, to be able to kind of separate those out. Also, you're able to hook up two sets of speakers via the rear of the unit, so you could have 4 speakers total running, which, I'm a 2-speaker kind of guy, but for anyone that would want 4 speakers, you'll have the capability to do that with the 2270. Also, too, because it's a integrated receiver, it comes with AM and FM. And I think what people love the most about these Marantz units is this big spinning radio dial here, right? Like, it's just sort of their signature piece of equipment on there. And I think that's what people love about these, and the 2270, comes with that on there as well. Now, let's talk about some of the cosmetic reasons why I think people love these Marantz 2270 so much. Obviously, it's the silver face unit that people really love, on all of these vintage units across all different lines, whether it's Marantz, Pioneer, Yamaha, any of those. So the silver plate really jumps out. Now, most 2270, well, some 2270s come with the really beautiful wooden case. This one did not, but you can still purchase them. I believe people still make them. You can find them that somebody handmade for these and put it on the put it with this unit. And the wooden case is just really beautiful and helps the unit stand out as well. But I think what it comes down to for a lot of people, when you talk about Marantz or you talk about Macintosh, you talk about those blue lights, right? And this unit, I actually don't have it powered up, so I can flip it back and forth. But this Marantz 2270 has the blue lights, and I think that's just what everyone loves when you've got it on, and those lights are shining bright. It just looks great, and I think people are just drawn to that. I had a friend, I sold a friend once, Marantz, and he had one. His dad had one when he was growing up, and that's what he remembered the most, was sort of the Marantz sitting there with the silver face and the blue light shining, and that's what he wanted to replicate when purchasing a Marantz. So I think that's sort of what stands out the most, and that's kind of like, for me, that's sort of the pros of this unit. I mean, obviously it's a high-powered unit. You can hook up several different sources. It looks great. But there's some things that kind of drive me crazy about the Marantz 22 line, and we'll talk about that next. Okay, so let's talk about a few of the cons that I've noticed with the Marantz line, especially the 22 line. And these are things that I just think you should be aware of before you rush out and spend a lot of money on these 22 units, because even the 2215s now are getting into like the $400 or $500 range. You used to be able to pick those up for $150, $200, but the price has gone through the roof on those as well. And I think it's just worth noting, what some of the common issues are, so you can either address those before you buy one, or know that these are the things that are coming down, that may come down the line, and you'll have to pay to repair, after you own one. The first thing that's very common on these 2270s is the power switch fails. And it's just a push-in button, clicking kind of in and out like that. But it's very, very common for these units to fail. I have a friend that has a 2250 and another friend that has a 2230. And when you plug the 2230 in and you hit the power button, it just goes zoop, 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 zoop. It's like it never can really come on. And it's the power switches arcing in the back. So we had to have that replaced, and we actually had to have the power button replaced on both of those 22 models. So if you're ever in the market looking for one, kind of keep an eye out, make sure that power switch is working. If not, just kind of be prepared to have to, replace it, maybe at some point. Luckily, I haven't had to replace the power switch on this one, but I do have issues with this one that I'll talk about next. The thing that I've noticed a lot about these 2270s, and there's a great YouTube account, Blue Glow Electrics, where they go through and show just kind of how these boards have aged over time. So the amp board, the phono board, and the preamp board. All of the capacitors and resistors are, capacitors and transistors have just aged. I mean, these units are over 40 years old. So for instance, on this unit, the left channel, the left amp board, is just really, really soft. And it's not a matter of cleaning it. It's not a deoxit issue. I've done that plenty of times. It's just those aged boards really need to be rebuilt from start to finish. And while you're doing that, may as well rebuild the right channel and the preamp. And you know what? Even the phono board is common. So you can grab one of these units, and if none of those boards have been rebuilt, and that was the case for me. I've had this for 6 or 7 years, and about year 5.5, 6, I started having those problems where the sound was just fading in and out, and the performance wasn't there. In fact, I've even started getting crackling. I just was using this as a preamp only, and I've started getting crackling, sound via the preamp. So really, all those boards need to be rebuilt. It's not a cheap job, but if you're in the market for one of these and you're shopping and you're able to ask someone if that's ever been done, that may be something worth knowing. Like I said, it's a pretty big investment. I will get around to doing that at some point, either paying someone to do it or maybe do it myself. But I do think that it's just by the time you get into year 40 and even the year 50s and we have these aged, that it's going to have to be done at some point. So just keep that in mind. I always tell people owning something like this is kind of like owning a vintage car. You know, at some point you're just going to have to put more money back into the unit. So something worth noting there. Now let's talk about the main cosmetic thing that is an issue with these. Now the first is, I was gushing on and on and on about the blue lights, right? Well, most people, when you get these, if they have never had the lights replaced, those lights actually kind of look green. And that's because on the inside of these units, Marantz put a thin piece of vellum paper. And it's just a white piece of paper, but what happens is over the years, it turns brown, and that then kind of diffuses the color, and it starts to look more green than blue. Now, I went through the trouble of replacing the lights on this unit myself, and it was not really a fun thing to do because I was just so nervous that I would screw it up. But on a lot of units that I've replaced, lights with, you kind of take the top off and you can access the lights from here. You can you undo a couple screws, tilt the light where the light bulbs are. You kind of tilt them back, pop them out, pop them in. With this unit, and there's videos on YouTube if you're interested that I've seen people post, you have to remove the faceplate, and then I believe I had to cut glue away to get the glass off. Then I had access to that piece of paper I was able to pull out. Then the lights were there that I could pop in and out. So it was a little more stressful than just doing your usual, easy in and out on some other units that I've worked on in a different manufacturers, whether it be Pioneer or something along those lines. But I got it done, and I debated back and forth, LED, non-LED, LED, non-LED, and it's one of my favorite arguments on the internet for vintage gear. Should you put LED in these? I've put plenty of LEDs in other units, again, Pioneers, Yamahas, other things, and they look great. I put blue LEDs in this one, and I don't like it. I just don't like the color. It's too bright, basically. And there's probably a way I can go in and turn that brightness down, maybe via a resistor or something along those lines. But I was kind of disappointed when I got it done and flipped it on, because again, I'd kind of put everything back and re-glued the glass and everything, and I was sort of disappointed. So if you don't really want a really bright display, I would suggest not getting the LEDs, and just putting the regular fuse lights in there, because I think you'll probably like it better. It's a little bit of, it just kind of gives it a little bit more classier look, I think. I don't know. You tell me. Some people really love the LEDs. They don't mind the brightness, and would love to know in the comments if you've put LEDs in here into a Marantz, and if you've liked it or not. And I'm always up for recommendations on figuring out how to tone that LED color down a little bit. If there is a way to do that, please let me know in the comments. But that's kind of nitpicking a little bit. Like I said, everyone is always excited when I tell them I own a Marantz 2270. Unfortunately, right now, my Marantz 2270 is sort of out of commission. So I've been swapping tons of gear in and out. But, at some point I'll get this back up and running again. And, it's a piece that I want to keep forever. It's the very first vintage receiver I bought. This sucker is heavy. It's like 60 pounds. So it doesn't get moved around a lot, and when you're done moving it, you want it to stay there for a while. So at some point I'll get it repaired and get it back into the system. But if you're in the market for one of these and you're looking to make an investment, especially these days, in a Marantz, I thought you might be interested in kind of what some of the pros and cons would be before you purchase one. If you like this video, please click the like button. It just spreads it around to other fans of vintage gear and vinyl records, which is mostly what my channel is about. And I appreciate you watching this video today. Thank you.